Hey everyone, welcome to Unchained Capital's webinar series. If I can speak today, my name is Justine Harper and I am joined today by Tyler Campbell and Trey Sellers, and we are happy to present Intro to Multisig and Sovereign Recovery. Just so everybody knows, this is a presentation that we had the honor of doing at TabConf this year. And because it was so successful, we wanted to go ahead and present that in a webinar format so that you could share it with friends or perhaps ask questions at the live Q&A if you weren't able to do so at the TabConf. So with that being said, if this is your first webinar with Unchained Capital, I want to tell you guys a little bit about it. So our goal at Unchained is to help empower you and help you build your Bitcoin knowledge in your journey of self-custody. So we provide multiple different series of webinars. This one is sort of our all-inclusive Unchained services, which will be a little bit about everything, usually trying to dig a little deeper into a Bitcoin knowledge topic. We do have our continuing education webinar series, which is the first Friday of every month. That is exclusive for clients. So if you are an Unchained client, make sure you're signing up for those and getting access to the team. And then we have our retirement inheritance series, which is the third Wednesday of every month. And they're going to focus on things like, how do you plan for inheritance with Bitcoin? How do you sign up for Bitcoin IRAs? What the heck is a Bitcoin IRA? So if you have not had a chance to join one of our webinars, I hope you check that out and join some future ones. But to get started for today, we are going to be digging into the nuts and bolts of Bitcoin multisig. What is multisig? Where did it come from? And how collaborative custody fits into that, which is what Unchained Capital does. So to kind of go over what we will be presenting today, I am going to jump into a multisig overview, tell you a little bit about where it came from and how it works. And then Tyler is going to jump into actually building a 2 of 3 multisig quorum. We're going to be doing that in Sparrow Wallet. And so you'll actually get to see the process of building one independently on your own. And then most importantly, we're going to talk about sovereign recovery. What does that mean? Well, that ensures that you can rebuild that wallet quorum in any wallet software, right? You should not be locked into one wallet software. So we're going to dig into that as well and how to reconstruct that in multiple front ends. And then we're going to turn it over to Trey to talk about collaborative custody, what that is, the benefits, and how you can go through and not only set up a vault with Unchained Capital, but how do you sovereign recovery that? You know, how do you rebuild that in a different wallet software? So we're going to dig into that as well. Few housekeeping things. We do have a questions tab on your lower right-hand side. We will have a live Q&A for those in attendance today, so make sure you're dropping the questions there. If you have any questions about the Livestorm platform whatsoever, go ahead and throw it in the chat, and Drew is here to help with that. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and jump into our multisig overview. So what the heck is multisig, right? Multisig is a Bitcoin native protocol. What does that mean? That means that it's actually implemented into the base layer code. It is not software that's been developed on a second layer or by a private company. This is in the Bitcoin code itself, and therefore it is scrutinized the same way that the Bitcoin code is, which in my opinion is super beneficial. But multisig essentially is just a wallet implementation that allows you to create a quorum with multiple keys. So in this example here, we have 3 keys, right? The keys are being represented by the seed phrases on the left-hand side. From there, we derive public keys. And those 3 public keys are combined to then create a multisig address. Now, you actually set up different rules associated with this address. So you can say 2 of 3 of these keys need to be assigned to then spend that Bitcoin, right? So you actually set up those parameters and you can really create as many different implementations as you would like with this. The most popular is going to be 2 of 3, and that is what we use at Unchained Capital, and that's what we're going to be showcasing today. But multisig was added to the Bitcoin protocol in 2012 after support for pay-to-script hash addresses was added. So that really allowed us to sort of add these additional features and additional implementations. And this is sometimes you'll hear it referred to as like an M of N quorum, but multisig as a concept is not new. Why I think this is important is I think multisig sounds really terrifying, right? Like, what is this very complex thing? But multisig technology is really not new. It's not a new concept. There are many different examples through history that use this. You can see here on the slide a couple of examples. You know, there's a lock in the middle that just requires 2 keys to unlock. On the left-hand side, you're going to see a very complex chest with different locking mechanisms. And on the right-hand side is an example of a relic vault that the monks at Mount Athos used. And the idea here is that they could actually take the keys and distribute them among multiple different monks. So not one monk had access to these very expensive relics, right? It eliminated the single points of failure. Also, some trivia, Die Hard has a multi-sig vault in it, so make sure you go and check that out. If you don't believe me, when you're watching Die Hard this Christmas, just take a look at that vault. What's going on there? So this technology is not new, but Bitcoin solved a very big flaw in this technology, right? When you have to bring all keys to one location to unlock something, that then is a single point of failure. If you have a physical item, right, that can then be drilled into, broken, that's a single point of failure. With Bitcoin multisig, you can actually sign a transaction with one key in one location, leave that key there, go to a completely separate location, sign with your second key. So it's eliminated single points of failure of needing to go to one location or bring all pieces to one location to sign a transaction or unlock a relic. So with that being said, let's talk about something that comes up a lot here is multisig versus seed splitting. So multisig is actually taking multiple keys and combining them to create an address with them, right? Seed splitting is taking one key and splitting it up. You have to bring all of those pieces back together to then use that key. And the reason I'm spending a little bit of time on this is because sometimes people think this is the same concept. Well, no, I have all these multiple pieces, right? So seed splitting is multi-sig. It is very, very different on a technical level. There are pros and cons with each, of course, and Bitcoin is all about pros and cons. So you need to sort of take a look at those and see what works best for you. But one thing that I would keep an eye on as far as cons when it comes to seed splitting is, like I mentioned, you have to bring all pieces to one place to put them back together, right? It actually creates a single point of failure. And also most of these are a software ran or created by a private company. So there is, something to be said there about being able to verify that software. Also, after you've put this back together or reconstructed it, it sort of gives information about your setup, which means you don't want to use it again. So every time you would sign with this, you then have to create a whole new setup with your seed splitting. So just some things to keep in mind. That's why we personally prefer multi-sig. It just eliminates those single points of failure in an easier fashion, but it's just important to remember the differences between them. Now, let's jump into what you guys are all here for though, right? How do I build multi-sig? How do I go about doing that? And for that, I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Tyler to walk us through that setup.
Awesome. Thank you, Justine. And no single monks of failure. I wonder if that's what they told themselves when they were dealing with their own multi-sig setup.
That's really good, Tyler. I'm going to put that on a t-shirt for sure.
Yeah, tweet worthy for sure. But yeah, today what we're going to be doing is building a 2 of 3 multi-sig, native SegWit 2 of 3 multi-sig, and I'll kind of go through and talk about what all that means. But I want to tell you a little bit more about what we're going to be using to build this. So what I'm going to be using, same devices that I was using at the TabConf presentation. I'm going to be using, for my signing devices, my hardware wallets today, I'm going to be using a Cold Card Mark IV, a Trezor Model T, and then a Ledger Nano X. It's kind of nice from a setup standpoint. All of these devices do take USB-C, so I'm not going to be unplugging and replugging all that often with different cables. Hopefully that makes it smoother just from the viewer's perspective. And then for the wallet softwares, so these kind of coordinator softwares, what I'm going to be using to construct my multi-signature wallet is I'm going to be first doing it in Sparrow Wallet. Sparrow just came out with actually a new release yesterday, version 1.7. So I'll be using that. It's kind of cool. You get to see that firsthand. I'll be building a 2 of 3 multi-sig in Sparrow. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, we built it in Sparrow, but we want to make sure that Sparrow is not going to be a single point of failure for us if I have Sparrow on my laptop. But what happens, if my laptop, I don't have access to it, how can I build my multi-signature wallet somewhere else? We're going to use a wallet configuration file to do that and bring it up into Caravan. later on. We'll go into Caravan, author up a transaction. You'll be able to kind of see how all of these wallet softwares, these coordinators, are really interoperable, and that's kind of cool. Again, no single points of failure along your multi-sig journey. So to get things started, what I'm going to do is go ahead and share my screen for you here. One moment. All right, my screen should be sharing. Now, if you look at my person down in the bottom of the live stream, I'm going to turn my head so I'm facing the monitor where I do have this all pulled up for you. Now, interesting things to note. I have Sparrow Wallet open, so it's kind of this big blank menu. And if I go to my Sparrow, I'm using a Mac computer. If I go to the upper left-hand side and do About Sparrow, I'm going to see that I'm running Sparrow 1.7.0, which was, again, released yesterday in the early hours of the morning. Craig Raw from Sparrow is always shipping codes. We'd love to see it. This version of Sparrow 1.7 is what I'm going to use to build the multi-sig vault, or I guess wallet, rather. And the way that I'm going to do it, the way that I'm going to actually start doing this, is I'm going to go up to File up here next to Sparrow. I'm going to select File and then New Wallet. Okay, I'm going to enter a name for this wallet. So this is going to be my Halloween wallet. And I'm going to go ahead and select Create. And now I get this kind of dashboard, all of these cool settings here where I get to really define the parameters of the wallet that I'm building. So what I want to focus on here is kind of this top option where it says Settings, Policy Type. Well, single signature, so single sig, is where when you're maybe using one hardware wallet, one signing device, you generate one seed phrase, and that is what's protecting your Bitcoin. Now, what I want to be doing here, though, for this demo is changing this policy type down to multi-signature. Okay, so multi-signature. Now, a bunch of things happened on the screen. We get this bar over here for cosigners. We get an updated descriptor. And then we have what Sparrow refers to as our key stores that we can start adding to this multi-signature wallet. So underneath multi-signature, now that I have that as my policy type, what I want to do is take my script type, and I'm just going to keep it at native SegWit. So P2WSH, native SegWit, is what I'm going to keep there for this demo. And for my cosigners over here, my M of N, which is kind of a common phrase in multi-sig, you're talking about how many keys total are going to be in your multi-signature setup, and then how many keys are needed to provide a valid signature out of that multi-signature setup. And what I have here, kind of the default by Sparrow, is a 2 of 3. So I'm going to add 3 keys. When I want to move Bitcoin later on, I'm going to need signatures from 2 of those keys. So all of this looks great. Now what I want to do is start adding my key stores, my signing devices, my hardware wallets. The terminology battle wages on, but I'm going to start adding my devices. Now I'm going to be using, like I covered before, a cold card Mark IV, a Ledger Nano X, and a Trezor Model T. Now I'm going to be using the cold card will be like the first key that I add here. And I want to note something cool about the Mark IV. Now they do have, in addition to the NFC capability with the Mark IV, you can now also use it as a virtual drive. So it's going to be recognized as an external drive by your computer. And you can just pull files from that. You don't necessarily need to use it air-gapped with a micro SD card. However, when I'm setting up my multi-sig, I really like the air-gapped feature of the cold card. Air-gapped meaning I don't need to plug it directly into my computer to share my public keys and my files. I can keep it air-gapped, and I can put that information on a micro SD card and use that micro SD card as kind of my transport vessel from my signing device to my computer. So kind of want to show off what it looks like, though, to have your cold card connected. So if I go to my Finder here, I'm going to see on my left-hand side, and maybe it's kind of tiny for those of you viewing, but I see cold card as its own external drive, but then I also see my no name, and this is that micro SD card where I wrote my public key file for my cold card. So just wanted to show that off here, but what I'm going to go ahead and do is add my cold card as my first key store. So I'm going to go ahead and select air-gapped hardware wallet because I see the little micro SD card logo here. I'm going to be pulling my public key from a micro SD card that's air-gapped. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. I'm going to choose a cold card multi-sig. So I'm going to go ahead and press import file. Again, this is just really making an example of how Sparrow is designed to be compatible with a bunch of different Bitcoin tools, which I think is really awesome. I'm going to go ahead and select import file. It's going to pull up my file explorer we just saw before. I'm going to go ahead and go to no name, and I'm going to select this cold card export file. It contains a bunch of information about my extended public keys that I want to be using in this multisig. I'm going to go ahead and select open, and that creates it there. You see the label is kind of by default cold card. I have my fingerprint for my seed phrase, for my master private key, my derivation path. This is kind of the I guess, non-standard standard for multisig native SegWit, and then I have my public key here as well. So all this fancy stuff comes with me just bringing in that cold card as a key. What I'm going to go ahead and do now is add my second key store. So I'm going to be using, this time, a connected hardware wallet. So what I want to do now is go ahead and plug in my Trezor Model T, which is going to be the next hardware wallet that I'm adding, my next key. I'm going to unlock my device with my PIN. And I'm going to go ahead and select Connected Hardware Wallet. Now, it's going to give me this option to scan for a connected hardware wallet. I can go ahead and select Scan. And it should be viewing in just a moment my Trezor T. I can show the derivation path for this. It's going to be kind of that native SegWit multisig derivation path. And I can go ahead and select Import Key Store. Perfect. So now I have my Trezor T with that fingerprint, derivation path, and XPub. Now all that's remaining is my third key, my N, my third key out of my 3, which is going to be my Ledger Nano X. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in my Ledger Nano X into that same micro USB, or USB-C cord rather, enter my PIN. And unique thing when you're working with Ledger devices always to remember is even after you enter your PIN and you unlock your device, you do want to have the Bitcoin app open as you're connecting to applications. So I'm going to press both buttons down on my Ledger Nano X to have that Bitcoin app open. It's going to say Bitcoin is ready on my screen. I'm going to select Connected Hardware Wallet. I can go ahead and scan for that. And I'll see my Ledger Nano X pulled up here. I'll import key store, and boom, now I have my 3 keys added. The 3 out of my 2 of 3 have been added, my cold card, my Trezor, and my Ledger. Once this is all set up, you're going to notice all of these options here to see transactions and to send and receive are all kind of grayed out. So what I want to do is my final step is I'm going to go ahead and select Apply down here in the bottom right in the Sparrow interface. Now, I do have the option to set a wallet password. So this is Sparrow specific. This is not a BIP 38 passphrase. This is just a kind of Sparrow unique password that you can apply to a wallet you create. I'm not going to do that today, so I'm going to select no password. And then kind of new in Sparrow 1.7, what it gives us here is more information about how to back up your multisig wallet. So we're going to be covering today the wallet configuration file, which is a file that contains the public keys necessary, the derivation paths necessary to go rebuild your multisig in a different coordinator. We will call it the treasure map to your Bitcoin in multisig. Now, what an alternative option is, or another option, is a output descriptor, which is what all this fancy stuff is. And Sparrow in 1.7 gives you more information about this output descriptor for you to save a direct copy of that output descriptor. It's just kind of a better standard across multisig coordinators for being able to share your multisig wallet details between coordinators and recover as needed. We can put a pin in this for now, although I do encourage you to Google output descriptors, use Bitcoin Optech as a really, really fantastic resource for learning more, or even River has a fantastic knowledge center as well. Learn more about output descriptors. I'm going to go ahead and select OK here. And then now what we're going to see is what was previously gray over here on the left-hand side is now turned blue. So now I can go to my transactions in my Halloween wallet, and I'm going to see nothing. I have no sats on this wallet yet. It's brand new. What I can do is that when I do have sats, I could send them. But what I want to do now is actually receive some sats to my multisig. So what I'm going to ask for is a member on the call, whether that's Justine or Trey. You could scan that QR code, send some sats into this wallet. We'll be able to see that come through as a transaction. And then while we're covering the kind of details of the wallet configuration file and covering how we can take this wallet that we just built in Sparrow and recover it into Caravan, what we're going to be able to do is actually see when we build this wallet back in Caravan, are actually going to see the funds appear over there as well, just like they would here. It's kind of the interoperability of all of this. So what I'm going to do now is actually wait for, on this transaction screen, we should be able to see the pending transaction. Of course, when it hits the mempool, you'll be able to see a transaction show up as pending. However, it won't be a confirmed transaction until it's confirmed into a block. So right here, we get a little notification in the upper right-hand side. Sparrow, Halloween wallet. I now have a new mempool transaction of 20,000 sats. So thank you to my mysterious donor. And these 20,000 sats also show up as unconfirmed in this transactions list. And we'll kind of wait for them to confirm. Might take a while depending on how congested the mempool is today. But while that's kind of doing its own thing, and before we recover into Caravan, what I want to take a moment to talk about now is that wallet configuration file, that treasure map to your Bitcoin addresses. So doing that sovereign recovery deep dive, really when we say sovereign recovery, we do mean what happens in kind of a doomsday scenario where your given coordinator is inaccessible, right? It could be Sparrow gets compromised and all of a sudden, Sparrow releases are insecure or something and we can't trust Sparrow. We need to use something else to access our Bitcoin and use our signing devices. Well, how does that look? Where can we do that and how do we do that? So that's where the concept of a wallet configuration file comes into play. Now, a wallet configuration file is a file that's available to you when you construct a multi-sig setup. You're going to be able to, a bunch of different coordinators can be used to create a multi-sig setup, and each of them will give you the option to download a file like this, a backup file, a multi-sig wallet configuration file. We know it's a mouthful, just kind of the Bitcoin terminology war again. But really, to drive the analogy home, what we like to think about in this wallet configuration file and how to think about it, we really want to think about it as the treasure map to your Bitcoin, right? If you think about the multi-sig wallet that you set up, it's kind of a digital treasure chest for your Bitcoin. Now, your keys open up the treasure chest, and as we've talked about in our example, you need 2 out of the 3 keys to open up that treasure chest. But you also want to know where your treasure chest is located. So the treasure map to find your treasure chest is going to be a file like this. This is your wallet configuration file, the treasure map to your multi-sig Bitcoin. So taking this file and doing a little bit more of a deep dive on it, we can start with kind of what does this file actually contain? Well, to kind of the naked eye, it looks like a bunch of code. If you're familiar somewhat with JSON code, it looks like in JSON format. You're going to have just some information kind of itemized in between brackets and parentheses. But what we're going to focus on, we're working top down, is what is covered. So to start with, we want to think about address type. Now, this refers to the type of address that you're building in your multisig. When I defined that script policy in my Sparrow wallet, I kept it as native SegWit, right? So that is my native SegWit multisig. That's that address type. My Bitcoin addresses would be starting with a BC1Q, and legacy addresses or P2SH are going to be addresses that start with a 3. So you're going to kind of see different address types in your Bitcoin journey. And this is what's contained in this wallet configuration file. Is when we're rebuilding our vault or our wallet somewhere, we want to know what address types are we working with. After address type, we have the network. Now, this network is pretty much going to be mainnet. That's just the mainnet Bitcoin network. In some cases, developers might be setting this network type to testnet or regtest or signet if they're trying to test some things. They don't want to use cold, hard, real sats. They can use some testnet Bitcoin to test things. But usually, this network type is going to be mainnet. As we work down from address type and network, we get to quorum. So quorum is that little slider bar in the upper right where we saw in Sparrow, you can set your quorum. So we did a 2 out of 3 multisig. Now, the most commonly used quorum for personal multisig wallets is that 2 of 3. 2 keys out of the 3 designated do need to be used to sign successfully for a transaction. So you see there, you might have to squint just a little bit, but underneath quorum within those brackets, it's required signers and then total signers. We have required, 2 are required out of 3 total. Awesome. Working down one more. This is kind of where we get into what I think is the fun stuff, the terminology. We don't have Peter McCormick on joining us today to talk about what an XPub is, but if he were here, he would tell you that an extended public key, or XPub, can be used to derive nearly infinite individual public keys. You can think about it like the master public key. And with one XPub, you can build a single sig wallet. You don't really get exposed to it all that often, because in single sig, you just really focus on your seed phrase and your addresses. But in multi-sig, with your multiple XPubs, with one from my cold card, one from my Trezor, one from my ledger, I get to build my multi-sig wallet. So this wallet configuration file, this treasure map, contains all 3 XPubs, all 3 extended public keys that I shared with Sparrow to build my multi-sig wallet, to build my 2 of 3 multi-sig. So the extended public keys are listed there in order. And you do kind of see the picture that we show. We show like the first key is where we're working through all of this stuff. The second key and the third key would contain all of the same information, but we wanted to make it, of course, easy to view on this slide. But that is your extended public key, or XPub. And underneath that is your BIP32 path. It's your derivation path. So the derivation path, it's kind of like a file pathway. If you look at it, and the option or the screenshot on the left shows an M45, 0, 0, 0. It's like each slash is taking you further down that file pathway. And really that path guides us from a seed phrase, from a master public key, to a given extended public key, and then therefore onto a given address. So really that BIP32 path is quite important. Now, what we want to think about, and I like to break this down just a little bit, in that BIP32 path, you can think about M as like being your master private key, your seed phrase. 45, kind of that next depth in the path. That's kind of some terminology we use when we talk about this path. That next depth is 45. So that's the script type. And that's going to be that P2SH type. If we go up to the address type on that very same image, address type up there is P2SH. So that's what we're going to see in that 45. The next 0 tells us that we're working with Bitcoin. If that 0 were a 1, we'd be using testnet. So it does make sense that that's a 0. We look up and we see the network is mainnet. All makes sense. The next 0 after that is your account type, so your account level depth, usually just a 0. And then after that, you start getting into your address indexes. So again, a lot of words, maybe so word salad. If you're brand new to Bitcoin, you're checking this out. But I do encourage you to do some more research also on derivation paths, or BIP32 paths. There's some fantastic resources out there that cover this, and it really does help you wrap your mind a little bit more around keys, multi-sig, and single sig too. Now, the last thing that we're going to cover here is the master fingerprint. This is just a unique identifier for a specific seed phrase or a specific master private key. These fingerprints do allow your devices to perform checks to ensure that a seed is being used to sign for a matching XPub, right? We want to know that, hey, what public key did we share? And do we actually have the private key that was used to derive this public key? Well, matching it up using the fingerprint is a nice way to do that. So the wallet fingerprint is also contained in this big list of things that ultimately accumulate into what is your multi-sig treasure map, that wallet configuration file. All right, so now what we want to do is we want to use that file. Like, hey, how do we actually, we've talked about what that file is, that multi-sig treasure map. How do we actually use it to rebuild what I just built in Sparrow? Let's go rebuild it in another multi-sig coordinator. And this time, just for fun, let's go ahead and use Caravan. That's an open source multi-sig coordinator that the Unchained engineering team puts a lot of work into. It is open source. It's out on GitHub. You can fork it, run it locally if you want. Caravan's really just a powerful tool. It's really lightweight. It's internet or browser native, so you can just run it in your browser. We can actually rebuild what we built in Sparrow in maybe about 4 or 5 clicks. So let's get to it here. I'll share my screen again, and we can dive
While
into.
you're sharing your screen, Tyler, do you mind if I jump in real quick? I know that we've got a vast difference of sort of levels of understanding in the audience today.
Mm-hmm.
So I think one thing that I sort of wanted to reiterate or just make clear is that the beauty of what we're trying to showcase today is that when you create a multi-sig wallet, that is created on the Bitcoin network, right?
Yeah.
And then you have all of these different choices of wallet software that you can use as a viewer to interact with that address itself. Now, when it comes to multi-sig from like a 101 basis, if you understand self-custody and you understand that, Bitcoin needs a private key to be unlocked, therefore it unlocks an address and you can spend from that address. Multisig is just adding additional layers of security by adding multiple keys. And that eliminates single points of failure because you could lose some pieces of information. You could include a trusted partner. The one key doesn't access your Bitcoin, right? You need multiple ones. So what Tyler is showcasing is how to build that in Sparrow wallet software. And now, because that address actually lives on the Bitcoin network, he's going to use a different wallet software to reconstruct it. And the goal here is to really show that you should not be locked into any wallet software, right? It's just a viewer to view that address and interact with it. So just wanted to kind of clarify that just in case something wasn't clear, because I know sometimes these conversations get very, very technical, and just wanted to showcase like what exactly Tyler is showcasing here. And if you have questions, please drop them in the Q&A section and the Q&A box, because at the end, we're going to have a very open forum conversation about this, and we can dig into those things a little bit more as well. So be sure to drop those in. With that being said, I'm going to turn it back over to Tyler. Just wanted to throw that in.
Yeah, no, thank you, Justine. It's taking a deep dive into that wallet configuration file. Even that is a mouthful, and then you dig into all those terms, and it's really easy to all of a sudden kind of look around and it's like, what is being talked about anymore?
It's so mind-blowing though when you think about it. Like, you can create a multi-sig setup and you have this treasure map, right? Or a blueprint or whatever we want to call it. And because that has all of this information in it, you can take that and you can go to different wallet softwares and reconstruct. And that information does not give access to your Bitcoin, right? It's just a map. It shows where that is. And that allows you to have sovereignty over your custody, because, hey, what if Sparrow goes down? What if Unchained server's not reachable to you one day? You can actually use that information to go to different wallet interfaces and interact with your address, which in my opinion is extremely empowering and shows the freedom that Bitcoin sort of allows. So yeah, I just wanted to gush over that for a little bit. But yeah, let's look at how we then reconstruct it.
Totally. Yeah. It's really, you're giving coordinator. When we talk about coordinators, we're thinking about Sparrow or Unchained's platform or Caravan. These coordinators are really, to Justine's point, your lenses for viewing your funds on the blockchain that are secured by your keys, right? So, if Sparrow did go down or Unchained servers go down, that's that power of that wallet configuration file. So now that I'm in Sparrow here and I've built my Halloween wallet, well, I want to save my wallet configuration file in a format that is readable by Caravan. So what I go ahead and do is I'm going to go up to this file option in the upper left, and I'm going to choose export wallet. I want to take these wallet details and export it into a nice treasure map for myself. And when I do that, I have a couple different options. You can actually export the treasure map to be read by Blue Wallet or to be read by Caravan. Cold Card, Electrum, there's all of these different options here. I'm going to choose Caravan. So I'm going to select export file, and I'm going to save it actually to my downloads folder. And it's going to say Halloween wallet-caravan.json file, because Caravan does take that JSON file type. We'll go ahead and select save. Boom. So now we get into the situation where, Sparrow is gone. Sparrow is no longer here. What do I use to rebuild my wallet? This is where Caravan comes into play. So new interface, right? New graphical user interface, a lot of different buttons and different options. Thing to focus on here is if you want to access Caravan, it is caravanmultisig.com. That'll reroute you here to where we host Caravan out on GitHub. And you get this nice welcome to Caravan, and it gives you more information about what Caravan is. But what we can focus on today is just its ease of use. How do you use it when you really need it? So you can go ahead and select wallet. Takes us to this page where you could, if you were a savvy Bitcoin user, build your own multisig, define your own quorum. There's that quorum terminology again. You can set your address type. All the things we really did in Sparrow, you can also do in Caravan. But what we want to do here for what we just built is let's select import wallet configuration. And it's going to open up my downloads, and I'm going to see that Halloween wallet-caravan right above my memes folder, which is my most valuable folder on my computer. I'm going to go ahead and select this Halloween Caravan JSON file and press open. And instantly, Caravan reads the names of the types of devices I was using, because that was kind of the name that was in Sparrow. It reads those pathways. It reads all these keys, pretty much reads everything that I just built over in Sparrow. And if I press confirm, Caravan instantly rebuilds my Halloween wallet. That took me maybe about 5 clicks. What I'm able to do is see that those 20,000 sats, that 0.0002 Bitcoin that was sent to that Sparrow multisig, now are also visible through this Caravan lens over here, because I gave that treasure map to Caravan. So in the spirit of getting rid of single points of failure, you now have another coordinator you can use. And you could also do this with Blue Wallet. You could do this with Electrum. It's really, really important for you to know that you're not going to be tied down to one specific multisig coordinator as a single point of failure. So with Caravan, important thing to note, it is stateless, meaning that you don't have a transaction history showing with Caravan, as it's really easy to pull up and to use. Like we said, 4 or 5 clicks, but that's for a reason. It's meant to be really, really lightweight. So I wouldn't, necessarily use Caravan as maybe your dedicated interface if you're using Bitcoin for your company or something like that. But as a recovery tool, it's extremely, extremely powerful. So to kind of show off Caravan just a little bit as we work from left to right, you can also receive Bitcoin to this Halloween wallet if you'd like. And you can also go and send out of this Halloween wallet. So that's, again, that recovery, right? If you need to access your Bitcoin and Sparrow's down, we can go ahead and use a Caravan here. So we won't go through an entire spend, but what I do want to do is just show how to do it, because it is kind of cool. So what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to spend to Blue Wallet. So I have my Blue Wallet pulled up now, and I built a wallet over in Blue Wallet that I've called TabConf single sig for when we did our TabConf presentation. And I'm going to go ahead and receive. I'm going to click receive here. I'm going to get this address and just click on this address to copy it. And I can then go back into Caravan, and I'm just going to paste that as my address that I'm sending to these 20,000 sats. I'm going to adjust my fee rate for the purposes of this demo, because I don't want to be paying an arm and a leg for a fee, all the way down there. And I can go ahead and select the max amount, because again, we're not going to be sending this Bitcoin. What we're going to be doing is just showing you what signing a multisig transaction actually looks like using these devices. So I have where the Bitcoin's going, I have the amount that I'm sending, and I have my desired fee rate is going to be really low, because I don't care if this transaction confirms into a block on the blockchain tonight or tomorrow. Really does not matter to me. I'm going to go ahead and select preview transaction. Again, I'm going to see where where this Bitcoin's coming from as my input, where my Bitcoin is going to as my output, and then my fees that I'm going to be paying, a really tiny amount of fees, which is kind of nice for me. And then I can select sign transaction. So what we said before, what we built is a 2 of 3, meaning I need 2 signatures. So I have my keys with me here. Maybe a bad OPSEC principle. I don't want all my keys in one location, but for this purpose, my $5 wrench attack is more expensive than the amount of Bitcoin that I'm going to be sending. So maybe there's, it's okay to be doing this for the demo. And I'm going to get a signature from one of my keys just to show you what it looks like. You can go ahead and select my key. Which one am I going to use? Well, I'll use my ledger, since that's the one that I have plugged in at the moment, still from the last time that I was adding it to Sparrow. So I'm going to wake my ledger up and enter my PIN. All right, I'm going to open up that Bitcoin app, and I'm going to select sign. All right. And I'm reviewing this information on the screen of my ledger now. I'm saying, okay, this is the address where I'm sending the Bitcoin. I'm going to confirm my total output here and scroll to the right, select accept, check out my fees, confirm those as well, and then sign this transaction. So you're going to see what just happened here. Well, what showed up on the screen was this really long string of letters and numbers. This is kind of like a raw signature. When you're signing for a Bitcoin transaction cryptographically, this is the signature that we applied. We now have one signature. I used my key to approve some information and sign this transaction. Now I just need one more signature, and I'd be able to send this Bitcoin over to my single signature wallet in Blue Wallet, which I just showed. So again, it's a lot of different softwares coming into play. This might look really complicated and interesting. It's probably something you don't really see in your other Bitcoin interfaces you might be using. This is normally abstracted behind the scenes. Maybe you'll usually just get a little check mark or something like that. But this Caravan kind of goes one layer deeper to show you this, which is kind of cool. Awesome. So like I said, we want to actually go through with the spend, but showing that today you can actually rebuild this Halloween wallet, get a signature, and you could plug in one of your other devices or use your cold card in that air-gapped format to get the second signature as well. Extremely, extremely powerful. So with that, though, I'm now going to turn it over to my awesome Unchained team member on our client solutions team, Trey Sellers, to talk about collaborative custody and kind of where Unchained fits into the picture in all of this multi-sig, I guess, crazy coolness. I was going to say craziness, but it's more cool than crazy. So Trey, over to you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Tyler. That process may feel, especially to people who are new to Bitcoin and are not very technically inclined, very overwhelming, right? And Justine was alluding to that. What we do in terms of helping people through this process is through something we call collaborative custody. And we're a trusted partner in helping you to set up multisig so that you do have the ability to eliminate single points of failure, and so that you can fully be sovereign in managing your Bitcoin, but without having to feel overwhelmed and without having to feel like you're out on an island and not have a support mechanism as you're setting it up and then on into the future, right? And so collaborative custody just means that our clients are holding 2 out of the 3 of those keys, and we're holding the third. And because we're holding the third, that puts us in a position to be able to help our clients recover in case something happens to one of those 2 keys. It puts us in a position to be able to help with inheritance as that Bitcoin may need to pass down to next of kin. And so you end up in a situation where you have unilateral control over the Bitcoin. Unchained is acting as a backup to you, but you have no counterparty risk to us or anybody else, and you have no single points of failure in that setup. And so just to briefly expand on the benefits of collaborative custody, when I was first into Bitcoin, I started going down the rabbit hole. I started holding my own keys, and I ultimately decided, hey, I need multisig as well. And I went through that process of building multisig in a very similar fashion to what Tyler just showed prior to becoming an Unchained client and prior to joining the team. And I decided to become an Unchained client because of the benefits that collaborative custody offers above and beyond just the ability to help get set up, right? So this education and help available for setting up multisig so that you're in a position where you're really comfortable and really confident with the way everything is working, we're there to help as part of that process, right? Ongoing support for questions. Whenever something comes up and you're just wondering something about Bitcoin, generally speaking, or about your multisig setup, or how you can get support for any issues that you may arise, it's really nice to have somebody to turn to and be able to ask those questions and get answers in a timely manner, right? Without doing that research on your own and perhaps being wrong about what you come up with, right? One really interesting benefit of collaborative custody is that because we have that third key, we're also able to help you spend funds when you only have access to one key. So that could be in a situation where you do have a compromise. One of your keys is compromised or it's lost and we need to help you recover. But it also could be you could be traveling and you want to bring one key with you so that you have access to spend your funds. Well, you can ask for a second signature from Unchained, and we can be there to help you move Bitcoin without you having to bring both of your keys with you and therefore putting your Bitcoin at risk, right? A very similar type of scenario in inheritance planning. Because we have that one key, we're there and available and in a position to help our clients to pass that Bitcoin down to their next of kin, whoever would be inheriting that Bitcoin, in a way where you don't have to trust somebody with knowing your balance. You don't have to trust somebody else with having full access to the Bitcoin while you're alive, right? So a really, really great benefit there. And then, the core of what we provide in our relationship with our clients does revolve around custody and helping people hold their own keys. But because we do everything in a Bitcoin native way, we're also able to offer some value added financial services that are built around that or built on top of that. So we have the ability for our clients to buy Bitcoin with us. That gets deposited directly into their Unchained vault. If you need some liquidity and don't want to sell your Bitcoin, we offer Bitcoin-backed loans. And a very popular product of ours is a Bitcoin IRA. If you've got some funds in an IRA or a 401k from a previous employer, you want to hold it in Bitcoin, you can do that with the exact same 2 of 3 multi-sig security model sitting right next to your regular personal Bitcoin, and using the same 2 keys as well, right? So a lot of versatility there, and really being a one-stop shop for everything you need when it comes to making sure your Bitcoin is secure and that you're also making the most of it, maximizing the value of that generational wealth that you've got. So all that said, with benefits of collaborative custody, I want to just very quickly show everybody what an Unchained vault looks like, and give a quick overview of that, as well as show how you actually can use Unchained and be completely self-sovereign in terms of the same type of recovery process that we were talking about. So you can see I've got a demo environment up here with a vault, and it's got a little bit of Bitcoin in it. It's got 40,000 sats. And you can see the key quorum that I've set up for that vault, where I'm controlling these 2 keys. And then there's an icon there representing the key that Unchained controls. When you go about setting up a vault, you're going through a very similar process as when what Tyler just showed when he was setting up that multi-sig with Sparrow. You're sharing extended public key information there. We're combining that with an extended public key from our key that we control, and we're able to generate a Bitcoin wallet that is controlled by 2 of 3 keys, and all of the addresses that are associated with those are controlled by 2 of 3 keys, so that when you do need to spend Bitcoin, you need to provide 2 signatures and not just 1, as would be the case in single signature, right? So that's how you get this really resilient and really secure setup, but have a partner that can help you through the process, right? And so this looks very similar to what you saw in Sparrow, and it's built in a way that is fully interoperable with Sparrow, with a lot of other open source software that is out there, right? And so that's really important when we bring the conversation all the way back to how we started, which is, how do you get to a place where you're fully sovereign, where you don't have to rely on anybody else to be able to hold this generational wealth that you've got in Bitcoin. And if something were to happen to Unchained, you still have the ability to access your Bitcoin at all times. And so after you've set up a vault, after you've funded it, you have the ability to download that external spend information, those extended public keys, those derivation paths that are used to construct that vault. And once you've done so, you can then just recover your vault in this very similar fashion as we showed you with Caravan. You can do that with your Unchained vault, right? So if I grab that configuration file that I downloaded earlier, it's got all the extended public key information and all the derivation path information that's needed to rebuild or reconstruct that vault completely outside the Unchained platform. So I'm just going to connect to a Bitcoin node here, and I'm just going to confirm that. And you'll see that right away, it's rebuilding that vault, and it's showing the Bitcoin that I've got secured in there. So this is hosted on GitHub. It's completely outside of our platform. You can follow the exact same type of process to recover your vault in Sparrow. If you're running your own node at home and you've got Sparrow connected to that, you have the ability to verify all of your own transactions in a fully Bitcoin native way by just rebuilding your vault in Sparrow and using that to verify your own transactions. So that's really it, right? It's kind of the best of both worlds, where you have all of the sovereignty, all of the security, all of the resiliency that Multisig offers, but you also have a trusted partner there to help you through the process and setting it up, and to help make sure that you are good to go on an ongoing basis, that you can get your questions answered, and that you have somebody there for you to help you through the process as and when some issue happens, like a compromised key or an inheritance planning type scenario. All right, very good. So I think that's all we have in terms of the demo. We should be able to move on to Q&A, and I think we've got about 10 minutes to answer some questions that we've got there.
Yeah, and I wanted to address, this was a question in the chat, and then also there was one in the questions tab as well. But just wanted to draw attention to a webinar. I can't talk today. Wanted to draw attention to a webinar that we have that you can actually, there was a lot of questions about how do I then take my on-chain vault and go use it in different wallet softwares, which is a great question. That's super important. So we're actually doing a webinar on that next Friday. So if you're here and you're an Unchained client and you're like, okay, this is great, but I have collaborative custody and I want to know how to do sovereign recovery with that, awesome. We touched on it a little bit today, but we're doing a deep dive into that next week. So if you are interested in seeing the step-by-step guide for that, please join us next week. We will go ahead and put the link into the chat, which should be there already, but we will do so again. And if you are a client, you should be getting an email from myself later today to invite you to that webinar. But we do have also a YouTube link for that as well. That's an older version of how to recover in Sparrow, Caravan, and some others. So we will share that as well. But yes, I just kind of wanted to thank everybody for coming. How this is going to work is if you're here in the live version, you get the Q&A. And if you're watching this on YouTube, we're going to cut here in a minute. And we're going to do some deep diving into some questions from the audience. So I just want to thank everybody who's watching this recording for tuning in today. If you have not had a chance to actually join one of our live webinars, please do so. Our goal for these is just to help build your education. Bitcoin's a journey and self-custody is a journey. And our goal at Unchained is just to continue that journey with you and help navigate through that. So be sure to sign up for any of our future webinars. They are trying to be a little high level. Sometimes we get really into the weeds and sometimes we are more beginner focused. So we try to have a variety for you specifically. So make sure you sign up for those. But yep, thank you for joining. And if you are on the live broadcast, stay on here. We'll jump into our live Q&A.